Welcome to another class with Rick Primo Customs, and airbrushing for newbies. To get back into what we were doing last week, I remixed the gray. I took it out of my airbrush and used the airbrush for other colors. So this is another weekend, another class, and I remixed the gray until I get about the same tone as what we were. And we start off inside a dark area that we know is going real dark, just to make sure that we're not too dark or anything like that. So now I'm going to come in and work on the teeth, and as you can see, I had to sit there and move the airbrush a couple times to get the airbrush to start spraying. So that means it might be a little bit too thick. So I'll spray with it for a little bit and see if the reducer kind of mixes in. And then I might change it up and add a little bit more reducer. Now the paint I'm using is Wicked Colors. I'm using their white and black, and using the 4012 reducer, or the W500 reducer. And I'm going to reduce down the paint just a little bit. Come in here and spray some more. Okay. I'm going to come in and start defining these teeth. If you notice, when I do the teeth, I don't outline the whole entire tooth. I just go in and kind of blow out some of the dark areas where the teeth are going to be. Don't need to sit there and outline the whole entire tooth. By the time you end up shadowing it and doing everything else, you'll pretty much outline the tooth. Well, what I used to do when I first started airbrushing is I would sit there and outline the whole entire project in either black or white, and then go in there and try to airbrush it, and you'd always have this real dark line or white outline. That really gets rid of the look of realism. Now we're not doing full realism with this, we're just kind of doing a little bit of both. So now I'm coming in and just adding the shadows on the teeth. You don't want the teeth to look real flat. You want them to kind of have the look of almost like a cylinder. So you're going to shadow the outside edges. Now we're going to come in with the eraser, so I can go a little bit darker than what I normally would do. And then we'll erase out the detail. Now with the W500 reducer, you got more work time than the 4011. So you can work a little bit bigger section before you start erasing. Now if you use the illustration colors, you got a decent window. I think the window is probably anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour to be able to work it with erasers, rewettable. So you can see how I'm just kind of going in there and shadowing the outside edges of the teeth, leaving the centers open with the white. Now some of the airbrush colors going over it, which is fine. And now I'm going to go in with my Faber-Castell 7058B Perfection Eraser. I'm going to come in here and erase some of the highlights in. Now you can create a lot of your definition and artwork with the eraser, bringing the white back out. Now if you're working on a panel that doesn't have white behind it, you're going to need to go in there and spray white before it and let it dry overnight. The sealers are great for that because once they dry, they're pretty much bulletproof. So then you can go in there and erase down to the sealer and not have to worry about going through it. And that's just if you want to do erasable techniques. And this allows you to put in kind of a harsh, grainy detail that you normally wouldn't be able to do with just an airbrush alone. Kind of adds a completely different layer to it, different look. And when we erase, we're erasing a little bit lighter than what we normally would want. And then we're going to come back in and shadow it back over that. We can come in here and try to dig out some of last week's work. Going to have to push a lot harder, because last week was it's already set up and Alright, so now we'll come in and we'll just lightly take the airbrush and about 3 inches away and just kind of fog over that, all the detail you just put in. And we just want to push it back so it looks like the skull actually wraps back. If it was all the same brightness all the way across, it would just look like a flat plane. So as we push this back, we can get that cylinder look that I was talking about. And it'll push these teeth back and bring these out. Same thing with this side. And now I can come in and add a little more detail, kind of bring out some of the lines and grooving in the teeth. The skull teeth, you know, I always like them to look a little rough. Some people like to do missing teeth, and you know, depending on what the application is. If you're doing a pirate, you could always add a gold tooth in there. There's no law, you're the artist. You can do whatever you want. Okay, now I'm going to lay out the lower jaw. Now remember, we're making this look like it's kind of pushing out of the material, so the jawline is going to kind of flow all over the place. Let's do a little bit of bone structure in here. Now it works good for reference photos if you have a skull and you want to do your own reference, or if you want to do a person where it looks like they're pushing out. You can take a cheesecloth and wet it and put it over somebody's face, or if you have a skull, you can use a wet cheesecloth and it'll form to the face pretty well. Don't use plastic bags because, you know, your friend, whoever you're doing the person inside the plastic bag, if you don't take a picture fast enough, you might not have them around anymore. Okay, so now I'm going to shadow this down just to get the darkness of the color. Get that chin to pop out there. Okay, now let's go ahead and add some detail into here. So I'll come in with the airbrush and we can start adding a little here and there. Bring out some of the detail and do some erasing on it. So now I'm going to come in and pull some highlights out of here. Now if you erase too much and you don't like the way the erase looks, you go back in with the airbrush and just go back over it. The main thing we're trying to do is just kind of bring in a little bit of texture, but you can see that doing pretty quick. And it allows us to kind of slowly bring in detail to where we can fog back over it and blend it in and do whatever we need to do. Into here and just pop out some of this tooth again. Alright, so we're going to come back in and start adding some more detail, using those erased lines as our kind of starting point for the highlight, and we're going to kind of blend over those a little bit so they're not so in your face. So, now to get the real fine detail lines, you reduce down your paint to where it's flowing perfect. And then you just get real close to the surface, almost dragging the needle on the surface. This is why airbrush companies love us, because they constantly bend them. But to get those real fine detail lines, you gotta get pretty close to it. I'm spraying about 25 psi. Getting right on the surface. Now if you feel like you're getting spidering, it's because you're pulling back too far, or you have your paint reduced too much. Now, I say that kind of loosely because it's too much for your skill level. If you really got the trigger down good, you should be able to get right on it and just barely pull back and be able to spray water and not have it spider out. So what it is how far back you pull your trigger. Now some people, like me, will take I took a piece of leather on this one and put a leather bump up on it, and it extends the trigger. So now I can pull back further without pulling the needle back as far. What it does is it changes the fulcrum of it. So a taller trigger gives you a little more control. Some people, I used to use the cabinet rubber bumpers. So inside your kitchen, when you shut your cabinet drawer, it doesn't slam wood to wood or whatever it is. And there, you buy a package for a couple bucks. So you can see the detail that we're putting into it. And it's fairly quick to do. So once again, we did a little airbrushing. Now we can come in with the eraser, just kind of bring out some of those highlights. I mean, technically, if there's a piece of material over this, you wouldn't see any bone. But we gotta have fun. We'll come back in with the gray. Now this has all just been one color gray. We haven't changed any colors. It's all based on about the color of a primer gray. Probably like a number 6 neutral or number 7 neutral gray. So with that, now we can come in and see I'm pulling back and I'm not getting anything, so I'll go to a dark area and just kind of fog it in, and then I can come back, and now I know that my needle's all cleaned off and I can come in and do some detail. You can see how all that eraser and then layering on top of it and then more eraser, you can really get that detail in there. This side is going to go to almost black, so we can come in here and just kind of sketch in where the jawline is going to be. And we'll take that side almost to black. And I can come in here and just kind of block all that out. Okay, so now we'll take the eraser. Just come in and continue some of this pattern up in here. Like I said, this is going to go darker, so we don't need to do as much detail over here. And now we just fog a little color over it, kind of push it back. And then you got detail in it. So now we got the lower jaw pretty much done with this color. We'll move on up and we'll finish this side of the skull, below the eye. Let's finish the teeth. So we'll come up here and just kind of this pretty much goes all super dark over here. We're dealing with an extreme shadow. So now I'll come in here and just fog a little bit of that gray. I'll bring that bone in here. Get that shadow of that bone. Remember, the jawline has to look like it's a cylinder. Otherwise you get a real flat looking skull. So I'll come in with the eraser again. Bring in those highlights. And if you're working on t-shirts and stuff like that, you're going to have to do these highlights all with airbrush paint. Which is the way we did it for years. Just recently we started using erasers. Since the paint companies have made it to where their airbrush paints work with erasers great. Here with those highlighted in, we can come in and just slightly shadow those. You can add a little bit of detail in here if you want. Kind of come in with the gray and hit it darker. Now this is just a quick class on how I get textures working with the skull. So we'd love to see your skulls, see what you come up with. Airbrushing for newbies on Facebook, good place to post them. Or you could tag me with Primo. So we're just going to add some texture in here. You don't need to, but kind of gives it that pretty cool weathered look. So now we got the highlights in there. I'm going to come in with a little bit of that gray, and we could add a little more detail in just by going a little close and kind of hitting dots and pulling different shadows out of that area. Now we're going to drop this down in there. Open the cameras and get that eye started. So now remember, an eye socket's not really a hole. I mean, it's dished out, but it's not a hole. So if you want to, you can get a little bit of the kind of the texture inside the socket too. But we're going to have to do it all pretty dark. So what we'll do is we'll just go in here and shadow this up. You can see I'm not filling it up perfect. I'm allowing there to be dark and light areas. Otherwise it gets that whole look. Now while that dries a little bit, I'll come in here and just add a little more of the shadowing in this deep spot. And the cheekbone should come down about in this area. So we can put that in there, and this shadow should be pretty decent. And remember, this side of the skull is darker. Light source is coming from this upper direction. So if you notice anything on this side is getting darker, we're doing a little more shadowing. What we can do is, if the light's coming here, you might see a little more highlight on this side of the inside of the nostril than you would on the other side, because the other side would be in its own shadow. So come in with the eraser and kind of erase out some of it. Then we can darken up in here, and then just kind of pull it from there and have it come out. So now it has the appearance that light's hitting this edge on the inside of the nostril. Now on this side it has to be darker. So we'll come in and we'll darken this up. And bring that nose out a little bit. So now back to the eye socket. Now we can come in here and just kind of add some of the texture. And then we push this back again. It's going to start darker and kind of finish out lighter towards the outside edge. Same thing with the nose. It's all pretty much in shadows, but we can bring little highlights and texture into it. At first the eraser will look too bright. And then what we'll do is we'll go back in and shadow a little bit of a gray back over it. Let's bring this highlight in here. And just bring the shadow in and add little dark areas. Kind of push the eraser back. So adding an eraser, you could really see that you can go in there and add a lot of texture. You could also fix lines that you don't like. Go in there and kind of slightly alter them. Let's bring in this eye bone in here. And it's going to kind of go off. It still has to have that kind of look of pulling fabric. So what I'm doing is just lightly pulling that gray in, keeping it real light, so I can kind of see what it looks like before I go in there and hammer it. And I can keep on building it until I get that nice dark color to it. So now what I'm going to do is come in here and start darkening this up. I don't want to just do a straight line and try to pull a line. I want the texture to remain. So if you notice, I'm going in and creating dark and light areas as I go. Now we can come in and create a couple highlight spots here. Now since we just want to do soft highlights, I can come in with my pink eraser, which is a 7056, and that's a lot softer eraser. And it allows me to slowly pull in the lines instead of getting a hard line. Good to have both style erasers. Now on this I'm working on a foam core board. And if you shoot down your shoot down your white sealer, then you'll actually be erasing on sealer, and it reacts a little bit different. Has a little more grab to it. Gives you a little bit better texture than just working on this. But now that I pulled the highlights in, I can go in there and just kind of fog over, just like we do everything. That knocks them down just a little bit, and I can come back in and add a little bit of detail into those lines. Come in and just fog color over this. We'll come in with our eraser, add some texture into it. And when I erase, I like kind of doing kind of a circle or a little bit of a slight pattern, but not real long lines. If you're doing hair, you can get in there and do that. But with the bone structure, it's better to have little light and dark areas. At least that works for me. You can see I'm erasing hard and pulling out a decent amount of highlights. Now we'll go back in and shadow that up. Once again, just kind of fogging over it, and then I can come in and actually pull out some decent darkness and bring in those highlights. Make this eraser marks really stand out. Now this will work if you're doing cracks in granite and stuff like that. You can come in and do your crack line. Go ahead and just do a light shadow, and then bring your eraser in, and you can pull out that highlight. So just because we're working on a skull doesn't mean it only works for a skull. It's a different way to grab a technique in there and pull out some shadowing. Come in and we'll shadow it again. See how much depth you can add real quick with the eraser? I almost feel like you're cheating. We like cheaters around here. It's art. You can do whatever you want. As long as your customer's happy, you're happy. That's all that matters. So we're going to pull this off. Pull this off this way. Okay, this is a class style setup for those that are watching the videos. And you can click on the link underneath the videos to get to the class. And there's also a link on there to get to the Airbrushing for Newbies website. Now the class style setup is a live class. We actually broadcast live with students in the chat room so they can ask questions while we're going. I can answer the questions. It's full live feed, so you don't have to wait a week or 2 weeks to get answers for anything. It's almost as if you're right here with me in the studio. So make sure you check us out, click on the links, and come visit us. We need to thank iVlog for hosting us. What I'm doing is just going in there and adding little textures. I'll work this throughout the week and build up all the textures in this color gray. And then I'll come in with darker colors. Just, you know, keep on going darker and darker until I get the darkest I want for the effect. Now each time I come with the darker color, I'll do smaller and smaller areas. I won't hit the whole entire area as dark. Otherwise you can flatten out the image. But on Airbrushing for Newbies, on their Facebook page, I'd love to see your artwork. Throw it in there so we can see how we're doing on the teaching and what your skill levels are. Now the people that are in the class, do you want to see me continue this next week, or would you like to start on another project? this will just keep getting darker and darker and bringing out some highlights. So you pretty much have seen how to do that. It's up to you guys if you guys want to start a new project. We can also do a vote up on airbrushing for newbies. If they'd like to see the finish of this, or start on something with some color. Or so we're just coming in here with this medium gray, doing a little bit of detail, coming back in and pulling out some more bright dark spots. Okay. So one of the students said he would like to see this finished next week. And then after that we'll do a class on doing some realistic looking fire. And we'll do the real fire all in wicked colors, not using any candies. We might use some candy pigments, but for the most part it'll be all with the wicked color line. So next week we will finish this up. We do have to thank TJ Barrett, or Barrett, if you want to say his name properly, but I like saying it Barrett. Makes it mad. You got to thank him for editing all these classes and making them a little bit more fun to watch compared to sitting there watching me do nothing. But the editing, we're going to try to keep it to where it's as close to real time as possible. YouTube likes us to speed up our videos, but if we can show you a little bit more, it's kind of, when it speeds up, it kind of confuses me at least. And these are free. I want to try to keep them free to you all the time. Donations are welcomed, especially for the editor. But for the most part, we need to thank Createx for helping us out with paint, Badger Airbrush for helping us out with all the airbrushes, my wife for putting up with me, and all you guys for showing up. Without you guys, there is no class. So once again, I want to thank you guys for showing up. I will see you guys next week. Make sure you clean out your airbrush and keep the paint flowing.